Thank you, Ron. So, yeah, I think we are good.
Yeah, why don't you sit on, I want to move over a little bit so
Yeah.
everyone could hear you correctly. That's what I want to make sure. And I will get this out of the way. Minimize that. Get this here to the people who are looking at this, and we should be all good to go.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Thank you, Ron. So generative AI has taken the world by storm. By this time, we all know what generative AI is, and it enables machine to produce new content by understanding the existing pattern. While a lot of attention is given to how consumers are using generative AI, we think there is even a bigger opportunity for business to leverage generative AI and deliver and transform their business, deliver amazing experience to the end users. The true power of generative AI is beyond search engine and chatbot. It transforms every aspect of the business, and that's what we are going to discuss in the next couple of minutes. So I'm Murali Shankar. I'm a senior solution architect here at AWS. I've been with AWS for past 3 years. Prior to that, I was in cloud consulting, data center transformations, did a lot of that for past 20 years. And past 2 years, I'm again focusing back specifically on AWS migrations, data strategy, and generative AI. So in the next couple of minutes, I put a high-level agenda here. Next 30 minutes, we'll focus on generative AI stack and Amazon Bedrock. This will set a stage for understanding its impact and the future prospect. And in the next session, we will dive a little bit deep into Anthropic, and follow up that we have some demos that we have scheduled for. So what I want to give you is an overview of overall AI stack at AWS. So if you want to build a custom model from the scratch, then we provide the infrastructure and tools that you need. As you can see at the bottom of the slide, we provide all the tools and infrastructure if you want to create a custom model. We also provide applications that you can consume. With few clicks, you can configure and consume application. An example is Amazon Q that you can see at the top of this slide. Okay. Then there is Bedrock, where you can quickly build and scale your application using foundation model and the ecosystem we provide around Amazon Bedrock. Okay, so we play in all three areas, whether you want to be a provider, build your own custom model, or you just want to be a consumer and consume application, or you want to build and scale your own application. We can help you in all three. In today's discussion, we are going to focus on Amazon Bedrock, which is in the middle what we are seeing here. So in its core, generative AI is leveraging the latest advancement in machine learning. What makes a foundation model special is that they can perform multiple tasks, and because they contain a large number of parameters that make them capable of learning many complex concepts and respond to the users. And through its pre-training, a foundation model can learn to apply knowledge within a wide range of context. Okay, and while the foundation model comes with pre-trained knowledge, you can also go ahead and customize using your domain specific. If you have specific need to customize or train and fine-tune the model, you can also do that in Amazon Bedrock. Okay. So what is Amazon Bedrock? Amazon Bedrock is the easiest way for you to build and scale generative AI application using foundation models. Bedrock is a fully managed service so that you can get started quickly. There is no need to get into a large days of configuration and managing it. You can quick couple of clicks, you are there and you can start developing your application. you can find the right model for your job. We will discuss that little bit more detail. You have a wide range of foundations model. And why is that? We will discuss that in the coming slides. And you can customize your model with your own data if that is a requirement ever that comes up. And you have the tools you need to combine the power of foundation models with your organization data and execute complex tasks. Okay, so that is what Bedrock is all about. The concept is all about. So how do we use Bedrock? And it is very simple in its simplest form. You choose your foundation model and what is best for your use case. You choose that foundation model. Either you can use as it is or you can customize it. Then you send a prompt. What is a prompt? We'll discuss in a minute using Bedrock API. Basically, you are guiding your foundation model what the task you want to do. And then you take the response and process it. That is how the Bedrock works. And the beauty of that is you can use any of this foundation model what we bring onto the table. So depends on use case. You don't need to completely rewrite your program. You just switch a couple of APIs and you can select a different foundation model if you want. So let's look at a little bit more detail into what is foundation model, how we can leverage the foundation model. With Bedrock, there are multiple ways you can generate data from a foundation model. You can guide the model on how it's supposed to perform a given task. And there are few ways to do that. But the most popular way is prompt engineering. Then there is retrieval augmented generation or RAG. You can also customize your model if you like to do that. Okay. So let's look at some of this detail. What is prompt engineering? What is RAG? Which are the two most prominent use cases I have come across and my colleagues in most cases. That doesn't mean there is no use case for fine tuning, but there may be. But if you look at a high level, most of your use cases will fall either in prompt engineering or in the RAG use cases. Okay. So what is prompt engineering? The prompt engineering, you guide your foundation model to generate a desired output. So foundation models requires detailed instruction how to create high quality relevant data, and you choose the most appropriate words, phrases, and guide your foundation model to interact with users more meaningfully. Basically, you are passing few comment, few direction to the foundation model. Either you can do that in a single line, or you can give an example, and your foundation model take that input, process it, understand what it needs, and throw an output, and you can process that output. This is the most commonly used and probably the easiest of them all. But we also have a method called RAG, which is retrieval augmented generation, and that enables the model with up-to-date information from your data source. One thing we earlier talked about is pre-trained model, right? So there is always a knowledge cutoff, where what you can do is using RAG, you can augment the prompt with the contextual information such as the product detail or your corporate documents or your corporate data, and that can and draws from your private data sources. So the added context in the prompt help foundation model to provide more accurate response and relevant response. So if you look at between prompt engineering and RAG, in most cases, you will see RAG will provide you most accurate response and relevant response. So the idea is to use your corporate data to augment the prompt so that the foundation model provide you the relevant and most accurate response. Okay. Any questions on so far?
Yeah, quick question. So for the RAG, do you use a proprietary vector embedding or do you plug it?
Yeah, that's good. So you point into.
Could you just repeat the question for the people online loudly so then they could get the answer as well?
The question was, is it using vector embedding, right? That's what.
And is it using the proprietary or a plug and play with a LangChain or Snowflake or something?
See, embedding is basically converting your data where your your data where your models can read and understand it better from compute point. The lag chain and other are slightly different, but the idea is use your corporate data, and when you do the prompting, augment that prompt with your corporate data, so that it can actually answer more accurately and it can get the context of your questions. That's what it's all about. So you create embedding, and there are few ways to do that. Some of them are complex, but we also have solutions that very simplify it. It's called Bedrock, and we will cover some of them down the line.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, there are two questions. Which I already
Yeah, you can answer.
yeah, which I already answered.
Okay.
So the questions, but I think the questions were like there are two independent questions. One was around security, which I think Murli will cover
Yeah,
in the
we
next
will
slides.
cover in the next.
So I don't want to go too deep into it, but just keeping it high level, that one of the concerns around FSI or any customer would be, where is my data going? Right? Like, are you using my data to feed back to the model and train them and make them better? The answer is no. Amazon Bedrock does not do that. I think the differentiator is we give customers choice of models, because we believe one model is not the answer to all your use cases, right? Nobody has to use like a model that's trained on trillions of parameters for a simple summarization use case, for example. So we make sure the data is hosted in AWS service account, but your data is not sort of fed back to the portal and it's not trained on, so it remains with you. So that's around privacy and security. Then we also have something like guardrails. Murli will cover that, where you have more control around the response that's been generated by Amazon Bedrock. So you can tailor the response and make sure certain words or certain verbiage is not used that's not good for your product or your company. That's number one. The other question that's interesting, and I would like to have your take as well, is around how AWS is generating revenue. Someone referred to the stock market meltdown that happened last week, and like, oh, that was mostly because AI is sort of hype or it's not showing the value. I cannot comment on the stock market, but what I can comment is, I wouldn't say it's a hype, but I think customers are still figuring out where it suits the best, right? And I think that's what most of the GenAI services hosted by Bedrock or like AWS, that's what we are trying to convey to our customers, that not everything has to be AI. So we usually talk with customers, make sure we address a use case and make sure how GenAI can add value, save time, save resources, costs, and all that. Again, we'll cover that in the next presentations. And I think how we are making money is, it's not like the models we are hosting the models on customers' account, right? They are hosted on AWS service accounts. So we are, again, democratizing that, and we charge based on, as our philosophy is pay as you go, right? So input, output tokens, data, and so on and so forth.
And to your point, not all use cases
yeah.
cannot be a generative AI use case.
Yeah.
Now, everyone look at any use case and say this is a GenAI use case. That's not the reality.
Yeah.
What we are seeing is customers are looking at options, what they were not able to do before. Now they are able to do with generative AI. So we really need to spend some time, understand what is the actual business requirement, and is a real use case. And there are real use cases like that. It is some of them were existed before, but now you can do it more faster, more efficient, and in large scale. So we have to really look at each one and look at whether it's the right use case, and we start experimenting with it, fail fast, and if that is not, move on to the next use case. But what we are seeing in the market, just not a hype, it is reality, but you have to choose the right use case for you.
Hey, it's Ron Gerber. Let me just chime in on a couple of different things. First, from a security standpoint, and this relates to financial service and other organizations, we'll make an analogy to open source and the importance of guardrails and architecting your system. We had one of the world's largest payment processing companies come to us, ask for advice because they were worried about open source and deploying open source solutions for their payment processing that would force their solutions to then be entered into the public realm. And they said, we need to architect this, put in appropriate guardrails, because they were petrified about cyber criminals accessing open source tools that can enable these criminals to steal money. And I think there's an analogous situation exactly as Vahib was alluding to, of setting up the appropriate guardrails. So any information, any insights you are generating remains inside of your firewall. So that's a very important consideration that all of you need to be aware of when you're deploying these solutions and doing it correctly.
Thank you, Ron. And about the use case, I just want to add one more point. We have some live use cases at the end of this presentation. We will be sharing some of the use cases. This is not to say that this is the only use case, but to give you a broad idea what we can do. And that's what we are planning to cover. So let me jump back to the presentation. Coming back to the presentation, I just want to give you a view of the complexity that involved. As we discussed, prompt engineering is the easiest one. Then there is RAG, model customization. As you can see, you go up in the ladder, the complexity is increasing, the time you need to spend is increasing. Definitely, if you're getting to customization or pre-training, the cost is going to get increasing. And again, back to my earlier point, what I'm seeing in the market and in my customer base most of the time is majority of the use cases fall between prompt engineering and retrieval augmented generation. And that's the place to start with. You don't need to jump onto the top of it. And if that doesn't work, then we can discuss and we can look into the options. But will cover majority of your use cases. So I just want to give you a view of how the complexity between each task. Okay. So we talked about the knowledge rack. Now I just want to cover, just give me 1 second. There is a technical issue here. Yeah, got it. I got it. So we talked about the RAG, and that is what's going back to her original question. How do we implement RAG? How complex it is? Is it an easy process? So that's what we introduced, knowledge bases for Amazon Bedrock. It's a fully managed capability that help you to implement RAG workflows, starting from ingestion to retrieval and to the prompt augmentations. Simply point the location where your data is there. Probably that is in an S3 bucket, and Amazon Bedrock fetches the relevant documents and information from that, convert that into embeddings, that going back to your original question, and then store that in a vector database of your choice. There are a couple of choices. You can use Pinecone, you can use OpenSearch. There are a few choices there, but it depends what is the right choice and the right product for you at that time. So during the inference, Bedrock will retrieve the relevant data and augment your prompt. So this overall simplifies the RAG. If you are to implement but your own, it may take. There are some complexity. It's not that complex, but there are some complexity. We again, as a larger ecosystem, we are providing you an easy way to implement the RAG. Okay, so that is what all about the knowledge bases is for. With that, I want to cover what are the models and what Bedrock actually bring onto the table. So the bottom line is the choices. Okay, we are still in the early stages of generative AI, and there's going to be a lot of changes that is happening. A lot of providers are going to come and release. The existing models also going to change. So we believe customer choice is important because no one model will rule them all. Okay, that is why customers need flexibility to use different model at different times for different use cases. And for this, Bedrock have got you covered. So I just want to give you a view of what the models are. There are many models from Amazon. We also have partners who provide model. So you can leverage any of this model that listed here. And this is not the final list. This is a current snapshot, maybe a month back. And this is continuously evolving and changing. Again, the beauty of this is if you decide to use one model, you want to change the model, you are not going through a complete change. It is a couple of API change. You can API calls that change, and you can change the model anytime you want. Okay. So in the coming session, in the next session, we are going to dive a little bit more deep into Anthropic, and we will cover some of the details there. But just want to give you an overview. What are your choices of model and how you can leverage those model for your use cases. So now let's go back and look at some of the questions that's come on security. This is what Vaibhav was asking earlier, right, Vaibhav? So couple of points I just want to make on Amazon Bedrock and how we use the data. None of the customer data is used to train the underlying model, nor it is being shared with model providers. So your data is safe. All data that is encrypted in transit and rest, data used for customization is securely transited through your VPC. Again, data remain in the region where your API is processed or where we are leveraging Bedrock from which region. For example, if it's Oregon, data stays in that region. Okay. So this is what Vaibhav, that's one of the earlier question, right? How the data is being used, and
it was, I think, mostly around security and privacy.
Okay.
But so, yeah, I just focus on data for now, but obviously there are data privacy.
So data privacy is the next topic we are covering.
Yeah.
Okay. So customer data, again, not used to improve either our model or our provider model. It is not shared with any other foundation model providers. Okay. That customer data that include your prompts, your response, or if it's a fine-tuned model that remain in the region where you configured, and we are not sharing any data at that point. And from a security standpoint, like many other AWS services, it is fully integrated with IAM. So you can manage your permissions, you can grant for specific users group, or individual. You can also deny access. It is fully integrated with the IAM. And you can use CloudTrail to monitor the activity as you build the solutions and moving forward. So we give you full traceability and visibility what's happening in the backend. Like any other service, you can go to the CloudTrail and look at who is making the calls and what is happening there. The last point I want to touch up on this side is we now support AWS Private Link. So the customers can establish a private connectivity between your VPC and the Bedrock service. And that's a feature recently we released. Okay. Any questions on security, Vaibhav? Anything else on the chat?
Yeah, no, nothing.
Yeah, question. How do you ensure the result in your models are accurate?
So
like
Well,
AI hallucination, right?
yeah. So the question is, how do you make the results from the models or the response from the model is accurate? Okay. So this is, as you know, if you ask the same question again and again to any model, every time there will be a slight difference in response. So there are many ways to actually guide. You need to guide the foundations model a little bit. So either you can use prompt engineering, which you actually tell what you are looking for. Either you can give a one single shot, or you can give an example, then ask a question. That is one method. But if you want to go into you want to go back and actually improve your accuracy using some of your corporate data to guide, because as I said earlier, there is always a cutoff of knowledge on the model, then you can use RAG. And that is where you actually augment the prompt. Basically, what you are doing is you are taking your corporate documents or your guidance, you convert that to an embedding, and when you ask the prompt, you are supplying that knowledge and augmenting it. So that is another way. Then there are advanced things. If you want to really make it domain specific, you can fine tune your models. And as I said, there are complex tasks, but generally I haven't seen much, at least in my patch, not much fine tuning happening. Mostly you use either a prompt engineering or RAG to guide your foundation model.
And this is something that Bedrock does for for the organization or
No, the
that's
prompt
something that-
engineering, what you do is when you actually ask a question, for example, you ask a
Mhm.
question, you actually put that guidance in the query. And the
Yeah,
RAG
but-
is something you have to
Yeah, there's also
implement.
prompt injection as well, you enforce prompts and so forth, right, and all the other things. Because you're training the models behind it, and you have the prompt injection as well as how do you ensure the result is accurate? How do you ensure or what is the trend? And that's what it's, there's a balance, it's a very tricky balance, right? And then what you just said is a lot of time and effort to build that up, not overnight.
Yeah, definitely there is some trade-off in looking at accuracy. We have to actually spend some time on testing and validating it. And we may have to change the model. We have to choose the right model for the right model for the right use case.
Right.
And then we have to do certain level of testing. Maybe you want to add anything more on that, on accuracy part?
I'll add
No.
points, right? So
Right.
Bedrock provides
Um,
models.
If you speak, you have to come here and
Oh,
We'll do this all. This is Ron Gerber. You know, the thing that's relevant here, and a lot of people have questions probably in this room and throughout the Angelbeat community, is jobs and the impact of AI on jobs. And that's a very good point. And we saw the same thing with cloud computing, where people whose previous jobs were racking, stacking servers didn't necessarily lose their job, just became more architects and their roles changed. Like IT jobs aren't being eliminated. And I think what you see here is that you're not going to have an AI chatbot try and monitor output.
Yeah.
You're not going to have AI look at AI output to figure it out. This is one of the clear examples where people are skilled in IT now look at changing the roles where you need common human oversight to monitor the same kind of questions, create a database of answers, see it evolves over time. And then it's that human guidance, that human oversight that's so critically important that isn't going to necessarily eliminate IT jobs, but very much change existing jobs and responsibilities. Let me let our
So,
other
we-
AWS colleagues comment.
So Bedrock provides the model evaluation and performance, right? So when you do your prompt engineering or any other task using the Bedrock, you can select multiple models and see what accuracy values it's giving. And you can also define the custom data sets based on your knowledge base, right? And then choose the models and see what results it's giving. So choose the accuracy that is giving the best result and choose that model based on your enterprise knowledge. So if you go to Bedrock API page, we have the model evaluation. You can select the multiple models. It will give you the input, whatever the input that you are giving or anything. It could be text or it could be video or anything, right? The models will evaluate based on what you're selecting. So based on that one, you can select the best accuracy. What do you want?
a couple of more questions on chat. One of them is, when you refer to IAM, is this cognito? And also, do we need to use KMS for key management of data encryption within Bedrock? So I think the first one, it's not cognito.
It's not
We are
cognito,
referring
it
to
is.
plain vanilla IAM,
Yeah.
right? And I think when it comes to KMS within Bedrock, I don't know what that means. Is it with prompt, or are you just talking about something that's already mentioned on the slide where customers can use CMK for like fine-tuning models? So
It's the model encryption part.
yeah, so we do model encryption, but I'm not sure about the prompt, if they're asking about the prompt. So,
No, that
so
I'm
it's
not
more of an
sure.
open-ended question.
I'll tell you
So
what,
let's take
for-
that
yeah.
question and we
Yeah.
can actually, let's note down that question
Yeah.
and we can actually answer that.
And there's
Let's
one
do
more.
some research.
List down AWS security services used for Bedrock service. Again, this is more like open-ended.
Yeah.
IAM is absolutely supported. You could use KMS to some extent for model encryption. But then again, we are talking about encryption of prompt. I don't think so. That's the option.
No,
I
that
tell you what, the
So-
best thing is for some of these detailed questions that are organizational specific, I'll monitor the chat. This is Ron Gerber speaking. You can email me, rgerber@angelbeat.com, and we'll be able to give you more customized answers to what you're looking for. But we have another 7 minutes left of this great opening talk, and then we're going to bring up Ellie from Anthropic.
So if no other questions on that end, I just want to go through the compliance part of it, which is very, very important for many organization, almost all organization. So Bedrock is in scope for common compliance standard listed here. Amazon Bedrock is included in the scope for SOC 1, 2, 3 reports, allowing you to gain insight into your security control. Amazon Bedrock is under ISO compliance for ISO 9001, ISO 27001, and many more. So if any of this requirement, you have any specific compliance requirement, let us know. We are more than happy to answer, but you will see that it is scope for the most of the compliance standards. We are in compliance. Okay. So this was one of the follow-up questions from the security. The last part I want to cover is the consumption options. So as we know there are two options for you. One is on demand, and which is pay as you go. There is no commitment. That is the perfect place to start with, especially you are trying to learn or you are looking for some of your options and use cases, and this is the right place to start with. And this is based on number of tokens count, and we are charging based on both on the input and output tokens. And was one of the question, right, Vaibhav, how it is charged? That was one of the questions.
How is
Okay.
it was mostly not around charges, like how AWS is
Making money
from
on it.
Bedrock.
I'll skip that part.
So that I think ties closely to what we charge on.
Okay. So the pricing is basically it's on input and output token, how many words or basically that convert into token, and how many words you put into the system and how much response you get back. And there will be a slight price difference or difference between each model. It's all the public information we have. But as you move forward, as you develop your application, as you understand more of your user base and application performance requirement, if required, if you need a guaranteed throughput, you can switch into provisioned throughput. One key thing is that is not a starting place, at least in my view and many of our customer view. You need to really understand what your applications and user base requirements, performance requirements are, then make a decision, because there is a time commitment on that, either a 1 month or 6 months. But you will always get a guaranteed out throughput, and that's the plus point. So these are the two consumption option you have. I would always encourage you to start on the on demand, and that is where you can start experimenting with Bedrock. Okay. So with that, we actually want to go next and cover a little bit more detail on Anthropic. So I will hand over to Ron to invite Anthropic. Ellie?